The wind howled over the Afghan desert, carrying grains of dust that shimmered like powdered glass beneath the morning sun. The heat hadn't yet reached its cruelest hour, but it was already enough to sting the skin and dry the throat. The forward operating base, known simply as Outpost Vega, stood like a cluster of tired bones against the endless tan horizon. Inside, soldiers moved with routine precision, refilling water, checking weapons, pretending not to think about the silence beyond the walls. And then she arrived. The rumble of a convoy broke the stillness as a tan Humvee rolled through the gate. From the passenger side stepped a figure that made heads turn not because of beauty or fame, but because of rarity. A woman, tall and composed, with her hair tied back and a rifle case slung over one shoulder. The patch on her sleeve read, Hayes, E. Lieutenant Emma Hayes didn't flinch under the stares. She adjusted her sunglasses, surveyed the camp, and nodded once at the guard who hesitated to salute. She'd seen that hesitation before everywhere she went. Men didn't know whether to treat her like an officer, a novelty, or a mistake. She'd long stopped caring which one they chose. Inside the operations tent, the air smelled of sweat, paper, and burned coffee. A few soldiers clustered around a map, arguing quietly. When Emma entered, conversation died. A captain with a grizzled face and salt-gray hair looked up. "You must be Hayes," he said, not unkindly, but not welcoming either. "Sniper unit, right?" "Yes, sir," she replied, voice even, professional. He studied her a moment longer, then shrugged. "Didn't expect they'd send us, eh?" He caught himself mid-sentence, clearing his throat. "A long-range specialist." Emma smiled faintly. "Neither did I, sir." Someone in the corner coughed, hiding a laugh. The captain frowned, tapping his pen against the table. "You'll be under Sergeant Miller's squad. They're out in Sector C this morning. You'll meet them at briefing. Dismissed." She saluted, turned, and walked out without a word. The eyes on her back were heavy, but she'd carried worse. The sound of their murmurs faded as she crossed the yard, her boots crunching against the hard earth. Every step felt familiar, the rhythm of a new deployment, the weight of doubt pressing down before the first mission. At the barracks, she unpacked her gear meticulously. Her rifle, the M201 enhanced sniper, gleamed beneath the dim bulb's light. She handled it like a musician tuning an instrument, checking every screw, scope, and trigger pull. Her spotter's kit was laid out beside it. Rangefinder, notebook, ballistic calculator. A young private walked in carrying a duffel. "You the new sniper?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "That's what they tell me," she said, not looking up. He hesitated, watching her assemble her rifle. "Didn't think they'd send a woman out here," he blurted before he could stop himself. Emma finally looked at him. "Neither did I," she said again, calm as glass. "But here we are." The private reddened and mumbled an apology, shuffling away. She almost smiled. Same script, different place. Every deployment came with its own chorus of doubters. But Emma never wasted time proving herself with words. Her rifle did that for her. She finished setting up and walked to the range. The wind carried sand across the targets. She adjusted her bipod, lay prone, and peered through the scope. A line of silhouettes waited 1,000 meters out. Her breathing slowed. Inhale, exhale. The world narrowed to the crosshairs and the steady rhythm of her pulse. Crack, crack, 3 rounds. 3 dead-center hits. The range officer lifted his head from behind his binoculars and whistled. "Nice shooting," he said. Emma reloaded without answering. It wasn't pride that guided her hand. It was focus. Every shot she took was a conversation with herself, a reminder that control could exist even in chaos. When she finally stood, the officer called after her, "Hey, Lieutenant, most of the guys here can't shoot like that. They're going to notice. She glanced over her shoulder. They'll notice when it matters, she said, and walked away. That night, the desert turned cold. Stars hung low like forgotten lanterns. Emma sat outside the barracks with a tin cup of instant coffee, watching the perimeter lights flicker in the distance. The outpost was quiet, except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional laugh from the mess hall. She liked the quiet. In the silence, she could almost hear her father's voice again, the gruff tone of a man who taught her how to track deer in Montana's endless forests. Patience wins, Em. The world moves too fast. You don't have to. He'd been gone for years now, lost to cancer, while she was still in training. But his words lived on, echoing each time she steadied her scope or waited for the perfect shot. Patience wins. She sipped the bitter coffee and let the memories fade with the night wind. Morning came with the sharp bark of orders. The unit assembled in the dusty square as Sergeant Miller strode forward, tall and broad, with a voice that could rattle steel. "All right, listen up," he barked. "We got new intel on enemy movement near the Al-Khazar Valley. We'll be setting recon positions by nightfall. You know the drill eyes open, comes clean, and no damn heroics." His gaze landed on Emma. "Lieutenant Hayes, right? You're with me." She nodded. "Yes, Sergeant." The men around him exchanged glances, some curious, others doubtful. Miller grunted. "Heard you can shoot." "I manage," she replied. He smirked. "We'll see." The platoon moved out after sunrise, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust that hung behind them like ghosts. As they drove through the valley, Emma watched the horizon through her scope, noting every ridge, every flicker of light. Her instincts stayed sharp, her silence unbroken. By midday, they reached a high ridge overlooking a series of dry riverbeds. The wind cut across the rocks, carrying the faint smell of oil and metal. Miller ordered a halt. "We'll set camp here. Hayes, find your nest high ground. Good sight lines?" Without answering, Emma scanned the terrain, spotting a perfect outcrop facing north. "There," she said simply. Miller followed her gaze, then nodded. "All right, go show us what you can do." The nickname wasn't new. Soldiers had a habit of naming what they didn't understand. She didn't mind. It fit. Emma climbed the ridge, the rifle strapped to her back. The higher she went, the quieter the world became until only her heartbeat and the wind remained. At the summit, she set up her position, tested her rangefinder, and lay prone behind her scope. From up here, the valley looked endless, like a breathing creature waiting to stir. She could see everything: the shadows of patrols moving below, the glint of sunlight off distant helmets. Every movement was a story unfolding beneath her crosshairs. She adjusted her scope once more, then whispered to herself, "Patience wins, Em." For a long moment, she didn't move. Just breathed. Just listened. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, the radio crackled softly. Miller's voice came through. "Eyes up, Hayes. We might have company soon. Stay sharp." She pressed her mic. "Copy that." Then silence again, heavy, watchful silence. The mist began to creep in from the east, a pale blanket crawling through the valley. Emma's eyes never left her scope. The night was coming, and with it, something else, something unseen, but inevitable. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But tonight, she simply waited still as stone, the quiet guardian above the valley, the woman no one expected to be there at all. The desert never slept. Even in the dead of night, wind swept across the barren earth like a whisper from the past, carrying memories of those who came and never returned. Lieutenant Emma Hayes lay awake inside her canvas tent, staring at the ceiling as faint dust drifted through the seams. Sleep didn't come easily here. Outpost Vega was too alive with sound. Boots on gravel, engines humming, and the quiet radio chatter that seemed to breathe in the dark. But that wasn't what kept her awake. It was memory. She could still see the cold fields of Montana, blanketed with frost. Her childhood home sat on the edge of a forest, where the world ended in trees and silence. Her father, a weathered man with sun-cracked hands, was her first teacher. He had been a ranger, a man who understood nature's patience. "Watch the wind," he would say, kneeling beside her as she held the rifle steady. "It speaks before it strikes." She remembered being 10, the rifle almost too heavy for her small shoulders. She missed her first shot. He didn't scold her. He simply adjusted her stance, his voice calm. "Don't fight the gun, Em. Feel it. It's not about power. It's about stillness." That lesson stuck with her. Stillness was strength. Her mother never understood their bond. She wanted Emma to become something safer. But Emma had always been drawn to control, the serenity that came with discipline. In the chaos of her teenage years, when others lost direction, Emma found hers through the scope of her father's old Winchester. He died before she enlisted. Cancer, fast, merciless. She was 21, just months away from military academy graduation. She never got to show him her commission papers. At his funeral, she placed one of his rifle cartridges on his casket and whispered, "You taught me how to breathe, Dad. I'll never forget." Back in the present, the night grew colder. Emma rolled over, pulling the thin blanket tighter, her breath visible in the dim light. She wasn't one for sentiment, but tonight, the loneliness hit harder. Out here, under a foreign sky, surrounded by men who doubted her, she felt the weight of his absence more than ever. A soft knock rattled the tent flap. "Lieutenant? You awake?" It was Corporal Dean, her assigned spotter. Young, sharp, and always too curious. She sighed. "Yeah, come in." Dean poked his head inside, helmet under his arm. "Couldn't sleep either," he said, grinning awkwardly. "Figured I'd check in before tomorrow's mission." Emma sat up. "You always check in on your snipers at midnight?" He shrugged. "Only when they shoot better than everyone else in camp." She raised an eyebrow. "Flattery's not going to make me miss less." Dean chuckled and sat cross-legged on the floor. For a moment, silence filled the tent, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then he said, "Word is, you broke a record at the academy. 2,200 meters, right?" Emma gave a small nod. "In training, yes. How'd you do it?" She looked past him, eyes distant. "Patience," she said simply. He laughed. "That's it?" "That's everything," she replied. Her mind drifted back to the academy, a world of structure and skepticism. The first day she arrived, a group of cadets laughed when they saw her name on the marksmanship list. One of them, a tall Texan named Gibson, leaned over and said, "You sure you're in the right building, sweetheart? The nurses' quarters are across the yard." She didn't reply. She just looked at him once, memorized his smirk, and walked away. Weeks later, during the annual precision test, Gibson and his friends crowded the range. The target was set 1,500 meters out. Crosswinds were brutal that day, enough to make even experienced shooters miss by inches. Emma's turn came. She adjusted her scope, heart steady. One breath in, one out. Crack. The spotter raised his scope. "Dead center," he announced. A murmur spread through the line. Gibson frowned, took his own shot, missed by 2 inches. Emma took another. Crack. Center again. When the session ended, she walked past Gibson. He couldn't meet her eyes. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. From that day forward, no one questioned her place. But she learned something more important than pride. The world only believes what it can see, and silence can be the loudest answer. Back in the present, Dean tilted his head. You always this quiet? Emma smirked faintly. Only when I have nothing to say. Guess that's most of the time, huh? She looked at him then, really looked. Dean was young but capable. The kind who wanted to prove himself, but didn't yet understand that proof often came at a price. You'll learn, she said softly. Learn what? That silence isn't weakness. It's control. He nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Then he stood. Well, control or not, you might want to rest. Miller says briefings at 0500. Emma leaned back on her cot. I'll be ready. When Dean left, she stared at the lantern's flickering light until it died out. The desert swallowed her thoughts again. The morning came gray and windless. Emma walked to the mess hall, gear slung across her shoulder, uniform crisp despite the dust. Conversations hushed as she entered. Soldiers always fell silent around her, not out of malice, but uncertainty. They didn't know what to make of her. She grabbed a tin tray, scooped a ration of eggs, and sat alone. A few glances followed her, but she ignored them. She'd been alone before. Miller walked in moments later, his voice carrying across the room. All right, listen up. We move out in 30. Intel says insurgent convoy sighted near Alcazar Valley will be on overwatch. He spotted her in the corner and added, Our new shooter will take high ground. Someone muttered from the back. Guess we'll see if she can handle real pressure. Miller's glare silenced them. You'll see, all right? Move out. Emma finished her meal in silence, rinsed her tray, and followed the others out. By the time they reached the vehicles, the sun had risen, pale and unforgiving. The convoy rumbled through the sand like beasts of burden, carrying weapons, men, and uncertainty. Dean climbed into the seat beside her. You ready? He asked, tightening his vest straps. I was born ready, she said, though not boastfully, simply as fact. The Humvee jolted forward. Dust clouds rose behind them. Emma watched the endless horizon through the small window, her mind strangely calm. Every deployment was different, but the rhythm of anticipation felt the same, that thin line between fear and focus. She thought again of her father's words. It's not about power. It's about stillness. She let them settle in her mind like an anchor. The deeper she went into war, the more she realized that stillness was what kept her sane. The desert stretched on for miles, featureless and cruel. Yet in its emptiness, Emma found peace. Out here, there was no noise of society, no judgment, no distractions, only wind, distance, and the long, unbroken silence before a storm. She tightened her grip on her rifle, the metal warm against her palm. Whatever waited in the valley ahead, she would face it the same way she faced everything, one breath at a time. And when the moment came to pull the trigger, she would remember the lessons carved deep into her bones. Watch the wind. Breathe, wait, and when the world moves too fast, don't. The desert had a sound of its own, not silence, but a low, endless hum of wind that whispered across stone and bone. By dawn, the world had turned pale gold, and Outpost Vega came alive with motion. Trucks roared, radios hissed, boots struck gravel in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown to something inevitable. Lieutenant Emma Hayes stood near the convoy, fastening the strap on her helmet. Her rifle case rested beside her, black and immaculate despite the dust. The day's heat was already rising, a suffocating blanket that clung to the air. Sergeant Miller approached, his expression somewhere between respect and challenge. You'll take the overwatch position, he said, tapping a map against the hood of the Humvee. Here, high ridge north of the valley. Perfect line of sight. You and Dean will stay on comms, report movement every 5 minutes. Emma studied the map carefully, tracing the ridgelines with a gloved finger. And the squad's insertion point? 2 clicks south, near the dry riverbed. If things go wrong, you'll know before we do. She nodded, already memorizing distances. Understood. Miller grunted. I don't need a hero out there. Haze. Just eyes. Clear? Crystal, she replied, voice flat but steady. He looked at her for a moment, maybe trying to find a crack in that calm exterior, then turned away. Mount up. We move in 10. The convoy rumbled to life. Engines coughed, tires kicked up dirt, and the sun climbed higher, glaring down on the endless expanse of sand. Inside the Humvee, Emma sat beside Dean, both wrapped in tactical gear that made them look like shadows made of steel. Dean adjusted his headset, breaking the quiet. You ever been to Al-Khazar before? Emma shook her head. Only studied the maps. It's rough terrain, narrow passes, steep ridges, not much cover. If I were them, I'd use it for ambushes. Yeah, Dean said, a nervous laugh in his tone. That's comforting. Emma's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. Comfort isn't part of the job. After 3 hours of rough driving, the convoy halted near a cluster of rocky outcrops. The air shimmered with heat waves, and even the horizon looked uncertain, bending under the weight of the sun. This is it, Miller called out, jumping from the lead vehicle. Teams 1 and 2, sweep south along the ridge. Haze, Dean. Take that cliff and set up. We'll radio you when we're in position. Emma and Dean climbed the slope, boots crunching over loose stone. The ascent was brutal, each step testing balance and breath. But Emma moved with practiced efficiency, her rifle strapped across her back like an extension of her own body. Dean, panting behind her, muttered, How the hell do you climb like that in this heat? Same way you breathe, she said. One motion at a time. At the top, they reached a narrow plateau overlooking the valley. From up there, the world spread wide. Dunes stretched like ocean waves, and the jagged cliffs cut the landscape into layers of shadow and gold. Dean exhaled. Damn, you could see forever from here. Emma unslung her rifle, kneeling beside a flat rock. That's the idea. They set up quickly. Dean unpacked the spotting scope, rangefinder, and notepad, while Emma assembled her rifle with ritual precision. She aligned the scope, adjusted for elevation, and lay prone, her eyes settling behind the crosshairs. Through the glass, the valley looked peaceful, too peaceful. Nothing moved except the faint ripples of heat. Looks clear, Dean murmured. Looks, she echoed softly. That's the dangerous word. Minutes turned to hours. The team below moved cautiously through the pass, their figures small and ghost-like from her vantage point. Occasionally, Dean reported coordinates and wind readings, while Emma scanned every dune and shadow with surgical focus. Winds shifting north by 6 knots, Dean said. Visibility's dropping near the east ridge. Copy, she replied. She adjusted her scope, her finger resting gently on the trigger guard. To anyone else, the quiet might have been maddening. To Emma, it was sacred, the stillness before truth revealed itself. At one point, Dean pulled off his headset, rubbing his neck. How do you do it? He asked. Just lie here for hours, staring through glass, waiting for something that might never come? Emma didn't take her eyes off the scope. Patience isn't waiting, she said. It's preparing. He looked at her, confused but intrigued. Preparing for what? For when it does come. By late afternoon, the light began to shift, shadows stretching long and lean across the valley. A fine layer of mist began to crawl from the north, unusual for the desert, but not impossible. It drifted like smoke, pooling low between the ridges. Dean frowned. Fog? Out here? Temperature drop, Emma said quietly. Could be from the riverbed. It'll thicken fast once the sun dips. Miller's voice came through the radio. Overwatch, this is Alpha Team. We're halfway through the pass. No visual on hostiles. Keep eyes sharp. Copy that, Emma responded. She checked her watch. The mission was running too smoothly, a feeling that always made her wary. Calm was never a gift in war. It was the space before something broke. The radio crackled again, a softer voice this time, another squad leader. Movement detected near Grid 7. Could be heat mirage, could be nothing. Emma zeroed her scope on the coordinates. The mist blurred everything, turning distance into uncertainty. She adjusted focus, nothing but haze. Yet something in her gut whispered that the world was holding its breath. Dean, she murmured. Range check. Grid 7 to our position. He raised the rangefinder. 2,900 meters. 3 clicks, she said softly. Right on the edge of visibility. They waited. The wind picked up, carrying a faint metallic scent. Gun oil, maybe. Or blood. It was impossible to tell. Then, through the mist, a flicker. Got movement, Emma said sharply. 3,000 meters out, northeast ridge. Dean pressed his scope against his eye. I don't see weight. Yeah, multiple shapes. Could be a patrol. Emma's heartbeat slowed, her breathing a perfect rhythm. She tracked the faint outlines, counting them silently. 4, she whispered. No, 5. Maybe 6. Friendly? Dean asked. Negative. Formation's wrong. They're fanning out, searching. She switched channels. Alpha, this is Overwatch. Eyes on 6 hostiles. Grid 7 north. Approaching your flank through fog. Recommend halt, can hold position. Miller's voice came back immediately. Copy, Overwatch. Hold your fire. Confirm targets hostile. Working on it, she said. She watched longer, letting instinct guide her. The shapes moved in trained patterns, low, careful, disciplined. These weren't wanderers. Then, one of them raised something, the glint of metal catching the dim sun. Through the scope, Emma saw it clearly. An RPG launcher. Confirmed, she said coldly. Targets hostile. 6 confirmed armed. Permission to engage? Dean asked. Not yet, she murmured. They're too far. Wait for them to commit. The fog thickened until the valley below vanished entirely. Only outlines remained, ghosts moving through smoke. The radio hissed faintly in the background, Miller's voice distant. Alpha to Overwatch. Report visual. Emma keyed her mic. Stand by. Her pulse was steady, each beat matching the rhythm of her breathing. She felt the weight of her rifle like a living thing, ready, waiting. Dean glanced at her. 3,000 meters exactly. Copy that, she whispered. Hold tight. And then the whisper came. A voice through her earpiece, faint and deliberate. Enemies 3,000 meters out. It wasn't Dean. It wasn't Miller. It was one of the scouts below, breathless, almost a ghost himself. The words hung in the air like prophecy. Emma's eyes narrowed. Confirmed. Targets closing. She reached forward, steadying her scope. The mist swirled, revealing fleeting glimpses of shadow and movement. The enemy was advancing, unaware that a rifle watched them from the heavens. She took a slow breath, the world narrowing to a single line of focus. Her finger rested on the trigger, but she didn't fire. Not yet. Timing was everything. 3,000 meters. Dean whispered beside her. What now? Emma's expression didn't change. Her voice was calm, the voice of someone who had waited her whole life for this exact moment. Now, she said softly, eyes never leaving the scope, we see who moves first. The wind carried her words away, blending with the rising mist. Below, unseen in the fog, the enemy closed in, and the valley held its breath. The mist grew thicker until it swallowed the horizon whole. The dunes, the ridges, the valley, all of it vanished into a pale gray veil that shimmered faintly under the late sun. The desert had turned into a ghost world where nothing was certain, except the sound of breathing and the static whisper of the radio. Lieutenant Emma Hayes lay flat against the rock, her heartbeat sinking with the faint buzz of her comms. Her eyes were fixed through the scope, but the world beyond it was shifting. Ripples of movement in the fog, barely visible, barely real. "Dean," she said quietly. "Mark positions again." Dean peered through his rangefinder. "They're moving in staggered formation. 6 targets. 3 on the ridge, 3 advancing through the low ground." "Copy." Emma adjusted her elevation dial, the soft clicks of metal loud in the stillness. She steadied her breathing, in for 4 counts, out for 4. The scope's reticle hovered over the faint blur of a figure, no more than a shadow within the mist. "Alpha Team Overwatch," she called softly into her mic. 6 hostiles advancing. 3,000 meters out, moving toward your eastern flank. Advise holding position. The reply came almost instantly, Miller's voice sharp but calm. "Acknowledged, Overwatch. We're digging in. Engage at will once positive ID confirmed." Emma's finger rested lightly on the trigger guard. She watched, waited. The figures in her scope grew more defined as the mist shifted, one lifting a rifle, another kneeling, and then she saw it, the curve of a foreign insignia on a shoulder patch. "Confirmed hostile," she whispered. "Engaging." Her world narrowed to a single heartbeat. The trigger broke. A soft crack echoed across the valley. Not thunderous, but precise, surgical. The first target dropped silently into the mist. Dean exhaled. "Hit." Emma didn't respond. She was already shifting aim, adjusting for wind drift. Second shot. Crack. Another figure collapsed. 2 down. Her breathing didn't change. Every movement was deliberate, mechanical, yet her eyes held a strange calm, like she was part of the rifle itself. Dean watched her, awed. He had seen marksmen before, but this was something else. She wasn't reacting. She was anticipating. Reading the wind, the fog, even the rhythm of enemy footsteps, as if they were lines of a song only she could hear. A burst of gunfire cracked from the valley below. Tracers streaked through the mist, wild, blind, searching. The enemy didn't know where she was, but they knew death was coming from above. "Alpha Team, contact." Miller's voice came through, strained. "Engaging east flank. They're trying to encircle." "Copy," Emma replied, steady. "Keep low. I've got your cover." She shifted her scope again. 2 more hostiles breaking from the ridge, sprinting toward cover. Her breath slowed. Her finger tightened. Crack, crack. Both fell before they reached the rocks. 4 down, Dean murmured, almost to himself. 2 left. "Not for long," Emma said softly. She scanned again. The mist was alive now, moving, pulsing. Every shot stirred the air, and the temperature had dropped enough that her breath fogged inside the mask. For a second, she felt the cold seep through her gloves, but then she saw it. Movement near the ridge's base. One last figure crouched low, dragging something, an RPG tube. "Dean, mark target, East Ridge Base, 301 degrees. "Got it." She exhaled slowly. Wind 5 knots north. Distance? 2,900 meters. Dean hesitated. "That's a hell of a long shot." Emma's eyes didn't waver. "Then it's worth making." The radio hissed again. "Overwatch, we're taking fire from the ridge. Can't see the shooter." Emma's finger tightened slightly. I can. Through the scope, she centered on the faint silhouette of the soldier raising the RPG. The shot would have to pierce mist, drift, and motion, but hesitation wasn't an option. She steadied her pulse. Time slowed. Crack. The round tore through fog and distance. A second later, the RPG fell from the man's hands, unused. Dean blinked. Direct hit. 3,000 meters clean. Emma didn't move. Her breathing barely shifted. Not clean enough, she whispered. There's still one. The last hostile was smart. Too smart. Instead of returning fire, he disappeared into the mist entirely. No shape, no shadow. Just silence. Emma's scope swept the valley, scanning every ripple of fog, every line in the sand. Her senses sharpened, her hearing tuning to the smallest details, the static in her headset, the distant hum of engines below, the faint scrape of boots on gravel. Then she heard it, a low crunch somewhere to their right. Dean, she said sharply. Movement, 20 meters north. Dean froze, hand on his pistol. You think? Before he could finish, a single shot rang out, not hers. A bullet struck the rock inches from his shoulder, throwing sparks. Sniper! Dean shouted, diving to cover. Emma rolled behind a boulder, the world exploding into chaos. Another shot whizzed past, slicing the air. The enemy sniper had found them, impossibly close. How the hell he must have circled around through the upper ridge. Dean gasped. Emma's mind raced. The fog had been their ally, but now it was the enemy's too. Visibility was barely 10 meters. Stay low, she ordered. She peeked over the rock, scanning through her scope, searching for the muzzle flash. Nothing. The fog swallowed everything. The next bullet chipped stone beside her face. Too close. She ducked back. He's zeroing on sound, she realized aloud. He's listening for movement. So what do we do? Dean hissed. Emma glanced around. The landscape was a maze of shadows, all hiding places. But she knew the sniper's rhythm now. 2 shots. Pause. Adjust. 2 shots. Pause. Predictable. She whispered, when he fires again, count 3 seconds, then move left. Dean nodded, terrified, but trusting her completely. The next pair of shots cracked 1, 2, echoing in the mist. Emma mouthed, 1, 2, 3. They sprinted sideways, diving behind another rock just as a bullet struck where they'd been. She raised her rifle, searching, heart pounding. Then, there. A flicker, faint muzzle flash in the fog, barely visible. Emma didn't think. Crack. Silence. The mist hung still again. Dean lifted his head slowly. Did you? She didn't answer right away. Her scope stayed fixed on the spot. After a moment, she saw the faint outline of a body slumped forward, rifle still aimed. Yes, she said simply. The radio came alive with static and shouts. Alpha team secure. Hostiles neutralized. Great work, Overwatch. Dean sank back against the rock, breathing hard. You just saved half the unit. Emma remained prone, scanning the valley again. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing didn't falter. It was as if the entire firefight had been a formality, a dance she'd known by heart. But deep in her eyes, there was something unspoken, not pride, not relief. Something quieter, a shadow of memory. Dean finally broke the silence. You've done this before, haven't you? Emma didn't look at him. Too many times. He hesitated. And it never gets easier? She shook her head slowly. You stop expecting it to. The mist began to thin, sunlight breaking through in narrow beams that painted the valley gold again. The world seemed calm, but the ground still smelled of gunpowder and heat. Down below, Alpha Team regrouped, their voices faint through the comms. Dean finally smiled, weak but genuine. Well, whoever sent that first alert, enemies, 3,000 meters out, they saved us. Emma nodded faintly, remembering the voice. The whisper had been barely human, as if it came not from one man, but from the air itself. Maybe, she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Or maybe it was the desert warning us. The wind picked up again, scattering dust and whispers across the ridge. For now, the valley was silent once more. But Emma knew silence never lasted long in war. It only waited, like the calm before another storm. The mist thinned with the rising sun, peeling away from the desert floor like smoke after a fire. The valley lay scarred and still. Spent casings glittered faintly in the sand, the only trace of the fight that had taken place hours earlier. Lieutenant Emma Hayes sat against a jagged boulder, her rifle resting across her knees. She had cleaned it twice already, habit more than need. The weapon gleamed, but her eyes were distant, fixed on nothing. Dean paced nearby, his nerves still unsteady. That sniper, he muttered. He was good. Too good for a simple recon team. Emma nodded slightly, but said nothing. She was replaying the fight in her mind, the movement, the distance, the sequence of shots. Something about it didn't fit. Dean crouched beside her. You're thinking the same thing, aren't you? She looked up. This wasn't a random patrol. They knew our route. Dean frowned. You mean someone tipped them off? Emma's jaw tightened. Or they've been watching us longer than we thought. Down below, Alpha Team regrouped, their figures tiny against the dunes. Sergeant Miller's voice came through the radio, crackling under the morning static. Overwatch, status check. Alive, Emma replied. All hostiles neutralized. But we might have a bigger problem. What kind? Coordinated ambush pattern. One sniper positioned north, ground team advancing east, classic pincer formation. Someone planned it. There was a pause. Then Miller's tone hardened. Copy that. We'll sweep the bodies and confirm IDs. Stay on that ridge and watch for movement. Understood. Emma set the radio aside and exhaled slowly. Her body was steady, but her mind was restless. The mist might have cleared, but the uncertainty hadn't. Dean broke the silence. You think this was connected to the intel leak last month? She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, I think leaks don't matter when someone knows your patterns better than you do. By noon, the sun was merciless. The fog had burned away completely, leaving behind a blinding glare that turned the rocks white and the horizon into a shimmering mirage. Emma shaded her eyes, scanning through her binoculars. Down below, Miller's squad moved among the fallen hostiles, checking gear and tags. Suddenly, one of the soldiers waved toward the ridge. Dean, she said, zoom in on that. He adjusted the scope. They found something. Looks like documents? Maybe a map. The radio crackled. Overwatch, we've got something. Not standard issue. Encrypted comms, field notes in English. Repeat English. Emma's blood ran cold. Say again? English, ma'am. Handwritten. Looks like operational notes. American-style shorthand. Dean stared at her, eyes wide. You think? Don't, she cut him off. Not yet. But her mind was already racing. American shorthand meant either stolen intelligence or betrayal. Hours later, they descended from the ridge to join the others. The heat hit like a wall, and every step felt heavier. When they reached the valley floor, Miller handed Emma a weathered notebook wrapped in cloth. Found it on the sniper. Look. She unwrapped it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, unmistakably Western. Coordinates, patrol routes, even radio frequencies, all theirs. Dean muttered, "This is our data, our comms structure." Emma flipped the pages, her eyes narrowing. "And there's something else." She pointed at the last line, written in block letters. "Phase 2 begins upon signal. North Ridge Observation Team." Dean went pale. "That's us." Miller cursed under his breath. "Means someone expected you two up there. Hell, maybe even wanted you there." Emma's voice was calm, but cold. "We were bait." The desert wind picked up, scattering sand across the valley like ash. The squad huddled around, their nerves on edge. Every gust seemed to carry the echo of unseen footsteps. Dean broke the silence. "So what do we do now?" Miller looked at Emma. "We move. If there's a second wave coming, I want distance between us and this kill zone." But Emma didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the northern ridge, the very ridge they had used for Overwatch. A faint glimmer caught her attention, like sunlight reflecting off glass. She raised her scope. For a moment, there was nothing. Then she saw it. A small black lens, half buried in stone. A reconnaissance camera. Her stomach turned. "They were watching us," Miller swore. "Pull it. Let's see what's on it." Dean carefully retrieved the device and connected it to his tablet. The footage loaded, grainy, time-stamped. At first, it showed empty terrain. Then, hours later, Emma and Dean appeared, setting up position. But what made Emma's breath catch wasn't the image of herself. It was the figure that appeared moments before they arrived. A man, dressed in desert fatigues. American uniform. He planted the camera, looked directly into the lens, and spoke a single sentence. "Observation begins. They'll be here by dawn." Then he walked away. Dean's hands trembled. He? He knew we were coming. Emma's eyes hardened, but her voice remained low. "Run facial recognition." Dean worked fast. Within minutes, the tablet pinged a result. The name appeared on screen, and Emma froze. Staff Sergeant Cole Merrow. Dean frowned. Wait, wasn't he? Dead, Emma finished. Declared Kier 18 months ago. Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to hold still. Miller's expression darkened. If that's real footage, we're dealing with something way above a rogue squad. Emma nodded slowly. He was my spotter, she said quietly. Back when I was still part of the long-range recon division. Dean's eyes widened. Your partner? Yes, she said, voice distant. He was the best I ever worked with. Until that last mission in Kandahar. We were hit by an ambush. I thought he didn't make it out. Miller rubbed his temples. And now he's planting surveillance on our ridges. Damn it. Emma closed the notebook gently. This wasn't a coincidence. He's sending a message. Dean swallowed. To you? To whoever's still watching, she said. The radio crackled suddenly, making everyone flinch. Static bled into a faint, distorted voice. Vega command to all units. Satellite scans indicate thermal movement north of your position. Possible armored vehicles. Confirm and fall back immediately. Miller grabbed the handset. Copy, Vega. We're moving. ETA to checkpoint. 30 minutes. He turned to the team. Pack it up. We're leaving this cursed place before the sky falls on us. The squad moved quickly, loading gear and securing vehicles. But Emma lingered for a moment at the edge of the ridge, staring into the north, where the mist had once swallowed her shots. The horizon shimmered again, faint outlines moving in the distance, too far to identify, but close enough to make her gut twist. Dean called out from the truck. Emma, let's go. She climbed in beside him, rifle resting across her lap. The engines roared to life, and the convoy rolled out, leaving the valley behind. But as the ridge disappeared in the rearview mirror, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them. Dean finally broke the silence. If he's alive, what does he want? Emma's gaze stayed locked on the horizon. The same thing every ghost wants, she said softly. To be remembered, or to make someone pay. The radio crackled again, faint and distorted, as if from a forgotten channel. A voice, low, familiar, whispered through the static. See you soon, Hayes. Dean's eyes widened. Did you hear that? Emma didn't reply. Her grip on the rifle tightened, knuckles white. Because she knew that voice. It was Cole. Night came fast over the desert, swallowing the convoy in darkness. The headlights cut narrow tunnels of light through blowing sand, and every shadow looked alive. Inside the lead Humvee, Lieutenant Emma Hayes sat silent, eyes locked on the horizon. The voice from the radio still echoed in her head. See you soon, Hayes. Dean glanced at her from the driver's seat, uneasy. You sure that was real? Could have been interference, right? Emma didn't answer right away. The low hum of the engine filled the silence between them. Then she said, no interference mimics a dead man's voice that clearly. Dean gripped the wheel tighter. Then what the hell are we walking into? She looked out the window, the stars reflecting faintly in her eyes. Something unfinished. They reached checkpoint Vega just after 2,200 hours. Floodlights bathed the outpost in a harsh white glow, throwing long shadows across the walls. Soldiers moved quickly, securing the perimeter. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and something heavier, fear disguised as routine. Captain Reese, the base commander, met them at the gate. His voice was low, urgent. Miller, Hayes, debrief room now. Inside, the command tent buzzed with tension. Satellite images flickered on the wall monitors. Clusters of heat signatures north of their last position, moving slowly but deliberately. Reese pointed at the screen. We thought we were dealing with scattered militia. But these patterns... He zoomed in. They're organized. Military discipline. Whoever they are, they knew where we'd be. Emma folded her arms. We found proof of surveillance, a recon camera placed before arrival. The man who planted it was Cole Merrill. The captain's head snapped toward her. Impossible. Merrill died in Kandahar. Confirmed by 2 eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses were wrong, Emma said, her tone like glass. I saw the footage. It's him. Reese stared at her for a long moment. If that's true, Lieutenant, then we have a ghost who knows our tactics, our signals, and our blind spots. And that ghost just ambushed one of our teams. He turned to Miller. Pull every file on Narrow's last deployment. I want to know who signed off on that Kia report. Miller nodded grimly and left. When the tent emptied, Reese looked back at Emma. You worked with him, didn't you? She hesitated. He was my spotter. My partner. Reese's eyes narrowed. Then you'd better tell me everything. Kandahar 18 months earlier, the air had been thick with smoke and dust, the kind that made every breath feel like swallowing fire. Emma remembered the sound of rotors fading into the distance, their extraction leaving them behind when comms failed. She and Cole Merrill had taken refuge in the ruins of a half-collapsed compound, low on ammo and surrounded. 2 clicks west, Cole whispered, peering through his scope. They're sweeping the ridge. If we move now, we'll make the wadi before dark. Emma reloaded her rifle with trembling hands. Command said to hold position. Cole snorted softly. Command's not here. We are. That was Cole, reckless, brilliant, and infuriatingly alive under pressure. Where Emma followed protocol, he followed instinct. Together, they'd been unstoppable, the perfect pairing of order and chaos. But that mission had changed everything. They'd held out for 3 days, rationing water and ammo, waiting for rescue that never came. On the 4th night, Cole made a choice. "I'm going for supplies," he said, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "They've got crates down there. Food, comes, maybe batteries." "It's suicide," Emma hissed. "Then I'll die trying." He smiled, that same half-grin that used to drive her mad, and disappeared into the darkness. Hours passed. She heard distant gunfire, then silence. By dawn, the extraction team arrived and found only her, wounded, half-conscious, whispering his name. Cole Merrow was listed KIA, presumed captured and executed. She'd carried that guilt like a scar ever since. Present day, the flashbacks snapped away as the tense light flickered. Reese watched her quietly. "You think he blames you," he said. Emma's jaw tightened. He blamed someone. Maybe me, maybe Command, maybe everyone. Reese leaned forward. "If he's alive, Hayes, then he's gone rogue. And if he's the one orchestrating these ambushes, we need to find him before he finds you." She looked up, her expression unreadable. He already did. Later that night, Emma sat alone on the barracks roof. The desert stretched endlessly before her, black dunes under a moonlit sky. She dismantled her rifle piece by piece, cleaning it slowly, methodically, like she always did when her mind wouldn't rest. Dean climbed up quietly, holding 2 mugs of instant coffee. "You look like you haven't blinked in an hour." She gave a small, tired smile. "Didn't want to miss the ghosts." He handed her a mug and sat beside her. "You really think he made it out alive?" "I know he did," she said. "And if he did, that means everything that happened after was part of something bigger." Dean hesitated. "What do you mean?" Emma took a sip, the coffee bitter as dust. "Cole was special ops long before I met him. He talked about black programs, missions that didn't exist, names erased from files. If he's resurfaced now, someone let him." Dean frowned. "You think Command's hiding it?" "I think they buried him, because it was easier than explaining why he turned." Down below, the base was quiet, too quiet. The wind carried faint metallic rattles, the whisper of tarps, the sigh of tired machinery. Emma's instincts prickled. She set her cup down and scanned the perimeter. "Something's off," she said. Dean followed her gaze. "You mean besides the ghosts and betrayal?" She ignored the joke. Her eyes narrowed. "No guards at Tower 3. Dean leaned forward. "Maybe rotation." "Maybe," she said, reaching for her rifle. "Or maybe someone already made their move." Moments later, the alarm klaxon split the night. Red lights flooded the compound as shouts erupted from below. "Contact! North fence! Contact!" Emma and Dean were already on their feet. She loaded a round, chambering it with a clean, metallic snap. "Stay close," she ordered, and jumped from the roof into the sand below. The base erupted into controlled chaos. Muzzle flashes cut through the dark as soldiers scrambled for cover. The attackers moved fast, coordinated, precise. Not militia, military. Emma hit the ground running, sliding behind a supply truck. Miller appeared from the shadows, firing short bursts. "They're inside the wire. How the hell did they breach?" She pointed toward the north gate. "That's where the cameras were down. Someone disabled them before the hit." Dean fired over the truck hood. "You're saying Cole's people are here?" Before she could answer, a grenade exploded near the fuel drums, throwing a wall of fire into the night. The shockwave slammed into them, heat searing across their faces. Through the blaze, Emma saw him. A figure at the far end of the compound, tall, unmistakable, even through the chaos. Helmet off, rifle slung low. His face illuminated by firelight for a fraction of a second. Cole Marrow. Their eyes met across the distance, two ghosts caught between the past and the present. His expression was unreadable, almost calm. Then he turned and disappeared into the smoke. "Hayes!" Miller shouted. "You see him?" She lowered her rifle slowly. "Yeah," she said, voice low, steady, burning. "I saw him." The fight lasted less than 15 minutes. The attackers withdrew as fast as they came, leaving smoke, bodies, and confusion in their wake. By the time the dust settled, half the perimeter was in ruins. Reese stormed through the wreckage, barking orders, demanding answers. But Emma barely heard him. She stood near the northern gate, staring at the ground, at a single bullet casing left gleaming in the sand. It wasn't standard issue. Stamped on its brass was a name she knew too well. Me-Series LR Prototype, Marrow Weapon Systems. Dean approached cautiously. "He left that for you." Emma nodded. "A signature? Or a warning?" She pocketed the casing, eyes hard. "He wants me to follow." Dean hesitated. "And you're going to?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He's not done. And neither am I." The desert before dawn was a colorless wasteland, a sea of dust and ghosts. The wind carried whispers through the dunes, swirling sand into thin, ghostly veils. Emma Hayes moved through it like a shadow herself, light, deliberate, unseen. Her rifle hugged close to her shoulder, the barrel glinting faintly in the moonlight. For 3 nights she had hunted him. Cole Marrow, the man she once trusted with her life, was now the phantom she couldn't escape. His trail was faint but precise, cut tire tracks, coded radio pings, and the occasional empty casing left in the sand, each one marked with the same engraved initials, M-Series LR. It was his calling card, his taunt. Every clue led her deeper into the wasteland, farther from command and safety. Captain Reese had ordered her to wait for reinforcements, but she didn't. Some debts couldn't wait. She crouched near a ridge, scanning the horizon through her scope. The faint glow of a fire burned in the distance. A camp, small, concealed in the hollow of a dune. "He's there," she whispered into her combs. Dean's voice crackled faintly in her earpiece. "You sure?" "Could be a trap." "Everything's a trap," she said. "Question is, who's it for?" 4 hours earlier, Forward Command Base Vega Reese slammed his fist on the map table. "You're not going out there alone, Hayes. Not after what happened last night." Emma's tone was calm, but defiant. "You don't understand. He's not attacking us randomly. He's testing us. He's trying to draw me out. And if I stay here, more people die." Dean stepped forward. "Then we go with you." But she shook her head. "No. He expects me to bring backup. If he sees a convoy, he vanishes. If he sees me, he'll stay." Reese exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're walking into an ambush." "Maybe," she said, her voice soft. "But sometimes, to catch a ghost, you have to become one." Reese stared at her for a long moment, then tossed her a data drive. "Satellite imagery from last recon sweep. The signal you intercepted originated here. Coordinates 27N, 62E. You'll find whatever's left of him there." She nodded once. "Whatever's left," she repeated. Now, hours later, Emma watched that fire flicker in the distance. She waited, motionless, until dawn began bleeding over the dunes. The first light revealed faint outlines of vehicles, unmarked jeeps, heavily modified. Not militia issue. These were military-grade, silent engines, encrypted comms antennas. Someone was funding him. She adjusted her scope and froze. A figure emerged from one of the jeeps, tall, confident, moving with the same measured rhythm she remembered. Cole Merrow. He looked different now, leaner, harder. His beard was streaked with gray, his uniform stripped of insignia. But his eyes, those sharp, pale eyes, were exactly the same. Cold and calculating. Emma's heart pounded, but her hands stayed steady. She lined up her sights, crosshairs resting on his chest. One squeeze of the trigger, and 18 months of nightmares would end. But she didn't shoot, because he wasn't alone. 2 men in black tactical armor stepped out behind him. They weren't local fighters. Their gear was American. Clean, advanced, classified. And when one of them turned, she saw the insignia, faint but clear, a winged dagger. Special Activities Division, CIA. Her stomach tightened. What the hell are they doing here? Cole said something to one of them, gesturing toward the East Ridge. Then he looked up, straight toward her position. Emma's breath caught. He couldn't see her. He shouldn't have been able to. But his gaze locked on the exact dune she was on, as if he felt her there. He smiled, slow, deliberate, and raised his hand. A silent signal. Seconds later, a flare shot into the sky, bursting white against the dawn. The next instant, bullets tore through the sand around her. Emma Dove, rolling behind a dune as rounds ripped through the ridge. Sand sprayed into her face. She returned fire, short, controlled bursts. Her earpiece crackled alive. Hayes! Dean's voice. We've got movement. Your location's compromised. Yeah, no kidding. She shouted, switching magazines. She slid down the slope, rifle at the ready, keeping low as enemy fire tracked her. They were precise, too precise for mercenaries. Whoever Cole was working with, they were trained elite. She sprinted toward a ravine, diving behind an outcrop as bullets ricocheted off the rocks. Her breath came ragged, her pulse pounding. Then, silence. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. The air was still. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Measured. Confident. She turned, and there he was. Cole Merrow, standing barely 10 meters away, his rifle lowered. The sun glinted off his weapon. His expression was calm, almost serene. Emma, he said quietly, you shouldn't have come. She rose slowly, keeping her rifle up. You left me no choice. He tilted his head, almost smiling. Still following orders? I stopped taking them the day you died. Cole's eyes flickered. Funny, that's the day I started living. They circled each other in the narrow ravine, every word weighted, every breath tense. Emma's voice hardened. Why the attacks? Why my team? You could have come to me. He gave a bitter laugh. Come to you? After they branded me a traitor? After they erased me from every record, buried my name under a false death certificate? She lowered her rifle slightly. Then tell me who did it. We can expose them. It's too late for that, he interrupted. They built something, Emma. A shadow program. Blacker than black. I was part of it once. We were ghosts, cleaning up what didn't exist. But when I asked too many questions, I became one of the targets. Emma's chest tightened. You're saying this is payback? He stepped closer. No, it's revelation. She shook her head. You've killed innocent soldiers? Innocent? He snapped. They were pawns in the same system that tried to erase us. The same machine you're still serving. His words cut deeper than the sand whipping between them. For a moment, she saw not a traitor, but a broken soldier, abandoned by the country he bled for. But then she remembered the faces of her fallen team, the smoke, the screams. You made your point, she said, voice trembling with restrained fury. Now it's over. Cole's expression softened, not with regret, but something sadder. "No, Emma. This is only the beginning." Before she could react, an explosion erupted behind him. The ground shook violently. A dust storm of debris swallowed the ravine. Emma dove as shrapnel tore through the air. When the smoke cleared, Cole was gone. In his place, half buried in the sand, was a small black case. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a hard drive, scorched but intact, and a folded photograph. The photo showed her and Cole, taken in Kandahar, both smiling, arms slung over each other's shoulders. But on the back, scrawled in ash-gray ink, were 4 words: "Find the real enemy." Hours later, Emma stood atop a dune, watching the sun set over the desert. The heat shimmered around her like a mirage. Dean's voice crackled through the combs. "Extraction inbound. Did you get him?" She looked down at the drive in her hand. "No," she said softly. "But I found something else." "What is it?" "Proof," she replied, "of something they didn't want us to see." She slipped the drive into her vest and gazed at the horizon, where the dunes blurred into endless gold. Somewhere out there, Cole Marrow was still moving, the ghost of Kandahar chasing redemption in the shadows. And now, Emma Hayes wasn't just hunting him. She was hunting the truth. The desert night was colder than Emma Hayes had expected. The wind carried sand that cut her face like tiny blades, but she barely felt it. Her focus was elsewhere, on the hard drive clenched in her gloved hand, and the faint, almost ghostly footprints Cole Marrow had left behind. The extraction team was delayed. Dean's voice crackled in her earpiece, distant and tense. "Hayes, you copy?" "ETA 20 minutes. Extraction point compromised. Recommend hold position." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She already knew this was no longer about survival. It was about revelation. Cole's warning, "Find the real enemy," had become her obsession. The hidden truth back at Forward Command Base Vega, the black drive was analyzed under high security. Emma had insisted on seeing it herself. The files contained satellite images, operational reports, encrypted communications logs, and internal memos, all pointing to a covert operation codenamed Project Blackwing. It was everything Cole had hinted at. A shadow program within their own government, tasked with neutralizing unofficial threats abroad, often erasing American operatives who knew too much. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the documents. There were familiar names, some dead, some missing. Operational reports indicated that Cole Marrow had been silenced after questioning orders during a Kandahar assignment. But instead of dying, he had vanished, erased from the system. This is insane," Dean muttered. "All this time, we thought it was just a rogue operation." Emma shook her head. "Rogue doesn't get satellites, encrypted comms, and American operatives in Black Ops gear. This is systemic. And he warned us, U.S. specifically." Her eyes hardened. "They've been manipulating every mission I've ever been on. Every death. Every intel leak. And now they're trying to frame him and me as traitors." The final showdown, she left the base before sunrise, moving fast and silent. Dean tried to stop her, but she waved him off. "I need to confront him. He's not just a ghost. He's the key to stopping them." The coordinates Cole had left were clear, a remote ridge overlooking the desert valley where it had all started. She climbed the dunes slowly, rifle ready, heart steady, despite the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. At the summit, she spotted movement, 3 figures silhouetted against the dawn. Cole and 2 armed men, obviously his team. He turned slowly, scanning the horizon. Then he saw her. "Hayes," he said softly. His tone carried no malice, only recognition. "I knew you'd come." Emma didn't lower her rifle. "We need answers, now." Cole glanced at the two men behind him. "You're in danger, Emma. This isn't just me anymore. They'll come for both of us." "I don't care," she said. "I came for the truth." For a moment, the desert held its breath. Then he nodded. "Follow me." They moved into a shallow ravine, distant from the dunes. The two teams spoke in quiet whispers, sharing intelligence and planning their next moves. Cole explained the full scope of Project Blackwing, the secret chain of command, the shadow teams, the sanctioned eliminations of operatives who asked too many questions. Emma listened carefully. Every detail made the betrayal sting deeper. And yet, in Cole's eyes, she saw something else: remorse. Not for the violence he'd committed, but for the system that had forced him into hiding. Dean's voice came over the earpiece again, quieter this time. "Hayes, we've got movement. Vehicles approaching fast, marked and unmarked." "They've found you." Emma looked up. Dust rose in the distance, at least a dozen armored jeeps, headlights cutting through the desert morning. Cole's eyes hardened. Then it begins. No more shadows. The ambush, the two teams prepared for confrontation. Emma took position on a ridge, Cole beside her. His rifle gleamed in the sunlight, movements precise, disciplined. The enemy vehicles advanced slowly, expecting resistance. But Emma knew their tactics, having studied the drive all night. She relayed coordinates to Cole and a small team, setting up kill zones and choke points. The first jeeps hit the traps. Explosions ripped through the desert sand, tossing debris into the air. Bullets shredded the space between ridges. Cole moved like a phantom, taking calculated shots, eliminating threats with a surgeon's precision. Emma's heart pounded, but her focus never wavered. She fired, moved, communicated, and coordinated, every moment a deadly dance. Dean's voice came over again, a mixture of awe and fear. "Hayes, you're like a ghost yourself." Emma didn't respond. There was no time for pride, only survival and justice. Confronting the architects, after 2 hours, the remaining attackers retreated. The desert returned to silence, but the battle had left its mark. Scorched earth, vehicles overturned, the air thick with smoke and tension. Cole approached Emma slowly, handing her the drive. "They wanted to bury the truth," he said. "Now it's in your hands. You can stop them or walk away." Emma looked at the horizon. She thought of her fallen team, of Dean, of the soldiers whose lives had been manipulated by the shadow program. And she knew her choice. "I can't walk away," she said firmly. "Not when everything they've done is here, waiting to be exposed." Cole nodded. "Then you're ready for the real fight. The one that doesn't end in the sand." Exposure weeks later, Emma Hayes walked into a secure hearing at the Pentagon. She presented the evidence, the satellite files, operational logs, and the detailed account of Project Blackwing. There was outrage, denial, and disbelief, but the proof was undeniable. Cole's name was cleared posthumously in the eyes of the public. Though he remained in hiding, his fate still shrouded in secrecy. And Emma, who had once followed orders without question, became a whistleblower, a voice for those lost in the shadows. In private, she met Dean one evening, the sun setting behind the city skyline. "They'll come for you," he warned softly. She smiled faintly, holding the drive in her hand. "Let them try. Truth is stronger than fear. And if they ever come for me, I'll be ready." Dean shook his head, a mixture of admiration and worry. "You've changed, Emma. The Hayes I knew wouldn't have survived this." "I've learned," she said quietly, "not just to survive, but to fight for what's right. Even when the enemy wears the same flag as you." The wind carried a distant echo, a whisper, almost like a ghostly voice in the desert. She didn't flinch. She recognized it, though it was faint, impossible to confirm. Cole Marrow had warned her, and she had listened. The truth beneath the flag had been revealed, and for the first time in her life, Emma Hayes knew she had the power to change everything. The desert was silent again, but she felt the pulse of justice running through it, and she was ready for whatever came next.